Just get out of the shot. Just leave.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Steve, and this is 60 Cycle Hum, the guitar buying, selling, trading, modding, fixing, breaking, reviewing, playing podcast.
That's right, Steve. We're going to do things a little bit different this episode. We're going to start off with an ad, which isn't different, but then we're going to have a big old interview with the directors of Reverb.com's The Pedal Movie.
Yep.
We already filmed that. It's a bunch of fun, so stay tuned for that. We talk about a bunch of inside, behind the scenes sorts of things. But first, let's talk about our sponsors.
Yeah, this week the show is sponsored by Chase Bliss Audio.
That's right, Steve.
.com. They make pedals more creative than you are with a digital brain and an analog heart.
Mm-hmm. Except for the Dark World, which is a digital brain and a digital heart. That's
right. If you're looking for a delay or a reverb or a different kind of delay or a looper or
modulation, a fuzz, an overdrive, a preamp, a boost, an EQ. They have pedals that will blow your mind.
Yep.
A boutique, a range, that's not the word I want. A plethora of controls.
Oh my gosh.
At your finger and your toe tips.
All your dip switches are on the outside.
Oh my gosh.
All your regular switches are on the outside.
Switches and knobs and presets and MIDI and expression and ramping and bouncing. Like you could spend a lifetime exploring a single Chase Bliss pedal.
Yep.
Or you could spend a lifetime exploring them all. That's what I'm going to try to do.
Yep. This episode is also brought to you by Big Ear Pedals.
That's right.
Grant and Karen over at Big Ear Pedals make great. They're kind of like, from a control perspective,
they're like the antithesis of Chase Bliss.
But
it's like, hey, you want a pedal that's got 9 knobs and a billion different combinations of dip switches? You go to Chase Bliss. Yeah. Hey, you want a pedal that sounds great and it's got 3 knobs? You go to Big Ear.
Yep, there you go. They're all great. I have most of them.
Steve is a completionist. He picks a brand and he tries to get all of the pedals.
It's like Pokemon. But go check them out. My favorite right now from them is the Albi.
The Albi's great.
The little chosen for you multi-modulation.
A curated effect.
That's the word I wanted.
Curated multi-effect.
Yep.
Is what we say about
it.
Go
check them out. ChaseBlissAudio.com for Chase Bliss and BigEarPedals.com for Big Ear Pedals.
All right, let's attack this ad.
Yeah, this ad was sent by Doug Christ from 37 Effects.
It is a Gibson Les Paul Custom 1981. This is my birth year. Yeah. Should I get this?
Yes.
$4,500 guitar because it's my birth year?
Do you have any desire to ever have like birth year products? Like, would you want a 1981 Strat?
I think if I had the opportunity, I'd love to have a birth year Strat or a birth year any Fender guitar.
What about would you want a birth year?
I think my Jag is an 83.
Would you want a birth year DOD 250?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because that's probably like
it's doable.
Both doable.
I tried to date my 250 once, and I think it might be an 82 or an 83 or something like that. So it's close.
Do you do like pizza or what?
What? Oh, date it? Yeah, pizza in a movie for sure.
Yeah. I'm not surprised there was only one date.
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere. No, I took my DOD 250 on a date and things got serious and we're married now. And we actually have a lot of 250 babies around because of that.
About this listing, too cool, half refin, I guess you would call it, stripped back and neck, original Silverburst in cavity headstock and some of the top, original Tim Shaw pickups. I think that's the original case as well. Funky looking tuners, not exactly sure what's going on there. Electronics and pots look original. An absolute must for your next Kiss/Tool audition. So this person knows like the backstory, the rarity, the legend, if you will, of the Silverburst Les Paul. They describe this as Art Deco. I don't think they know what Art Deco is.
No, this isn't. I mean, I think someone could try to make the case that there's Art Deco elements here because Art Deco has typically a lot of straight lines and geometric shapes. But the fact that we're looking at neon paints and kind of distressed paints and stuff like that. This is not Art Deco. This is like closer to like Cubist or something like that. Some sort of impressionistic kind of take on an Art Deco theme, maybe.
Yeah.
But mostly it looks like a really crazy way to refin a Les Paul, especially a Silverburst Les Paul.
Yeah.
Like people who are Silverburst lovers are probably just screaming right now looking at this guitar. I honestly, I kind of like it weirdly. Like the Silverburst mixing with like these triangles and geometric chunks of neon green and purple and then exposed bits of wood. There's something about this guitar that does it for me visually. Like I kind of like it. Is that weird?
Yeah, I have a lot of problems with this because especially the triangle that's just below the bridge.
I think that's my favorite part.
It looks like something about the way this paint is done makes me feel like it's just photoshopped. It doesn't even look like it's actually on the guitar.
It's just such a bizarre contrast between your classic kind of like smoky, dirty, well-aged Silverburst that has been stripped away in geometric patterns and then filled back in certain chunks with very bright paint that doesn't connect to the Silverburst in any logical way. But then for some reason, this connects to my eye in a pleasing way.
So did you look at those tuners?
Yeah, they're the ones that have the little flip out thing so you can speed tune.
Is that like a normal, is that a thing?
We've seen those before on this show. Like, I think it is a normal thing that came on some Gibsons for a while. Like a little handle flips out of the end. And so it's like a string winder built in. So you can spin them really quick.
I don't ever remember seeing those.
I remember.
Schaller gold flip out. So I guess Schaller made these.
Yeah.
These ones, the ones on this guitar are Gibson branded.
I feel like if there's anything to complain about this, like obviously most people are going to look at this guitar and be like, wow, they ruined it. It's hideous. Yeah. I'm a special case where I look at it and I'm like, I kind of like it. I think the price has got to be way too high, right?
It feels way too high. There is I'm looking at eBay.
It's $4,500 plus $100 shipping for a fairly significantly molested Les Paul from 1981.
I mean, that's the problem. Is it is a Silverburst, and Silverbursts are like really desirable, but part of what makes them desirable, I would assume, is the Silverburst.
Right.
Like, I don't know. I guess what I don't know is
the part of this guitar that people would pay extra for has been mangled.
Right. And so that's the thing. I guess I don't really, and I'm going through, like, for what it's worth, and this was a 30 bid item on eBay. So this is a really real sell. Somebody sold a 1981 Silverburst Les Paul custom body and neck. So no hardware, no pickups, no nothing for $3,700.
Yeah, that makes this price crazy because you could replace the hardware and the pickups for like $200, maybe $400 if you're getting really specific.
Well, I think if you want, I was going to say you have to get really specific because this is
to get the value.
You want those Tim Shaws. All of the other parts of this are original,
but
or at least
even if you go spend $1,000, $1,000 on getting that guitar playable with correct pickups, correct hardware, and everything like that. Like you go all out. Like I'm not going to spare any expense. I'm going to get the 100% correct stuff and track it all down. That's still like it makes the price of this ridiculous. Because this is fully, the finish is fully mangled. Like I look at this and my gut is going like, you have to find someone who likes it, who likes what's going on here, and is searching for a Les Paul of this year. And then I'm still thinking like maximum is like $2,200.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm looking. So along those lines, I am looking this up. You can get a minty Les Paul standard in wine red from 1981. I'm looking at specific years. 1981 for like $4,000.
Yeah.
on Reverb. Though some of them people are listing higher. There's a lot in the 4 to 6K range.
This could be
Maybe a little more, $5,000. So
what this is refin bait. This needs to be priced with a refin in mind.
right.
You buy this, you take it to someone who does really good, appropriate refins of Les Pauls. Like, I need you to redo the Silverburst on this to get it back up to stock, but still also make it look appropriately aged. Like, I want it to have the mojo that it's earned with its years, so its decades.
You want to hear something dumb?
It's a 40-year-old guitar. I want it to look like a 40-year-old guitar. So it's like you have to set aside at least like $500 for a refin on this thing.
You want to hear something dumb?
I want to hear something really dumb.
The price on this guitar has gone up $100 since when you took these screenshots.
Why?
I don't know, man. Maybe
Maybe this is one of those situations where the guy's like, the person selling it is like, yeah, honey, yeah, I got it listed. I'm trying to sell it really hard. yeah, I'm getting a few offers. It'll sell eventually. And really, they just don't want to sell the guitar. So it's like a go away price.
So this is kind of like an issue. I'm looking again, just looking at Reverb listings. Nobody has like a mangled
Right.
Les Paul from this era.
Well, there's no way to like accurately figure out the price of something that's mangled. Like, you have to go off your gut. If it was in perfect condition, then there's precedent for you to be like, well, here's what it should go for.
But I mean, like, there's not, you would expect to see at least something that's like, the closest thing was the one that I said on eBay where it was just the parts. It was just the body.
Right.
Body and neck, no hardware. Again.
But it's easier to put a number on the value of those parts.
Yeah.
Where this is like, it's a conceptual sort of like value of like, oh, you could consider it a refin. Does the refin subtract the value if you sell it again? Like, you have to you have to tell the next buyer, like, hey, this isn't the original finish. It was refinished.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like abstract concepts going on there when you consider the value of this guitar. And you have to consider the trouble that you have to go into to bring it up to stock. It's not just like, oh, $500 for a refin, so this should be $500 less than a stock condition. No, you have to consider your trouble and the time that it takes to bring it back up to stock in the price.
What if you just, and I guess this is a Les Paul Custom, and some of the other ones I was looking at were standards. So this is like, again, it's priced comparably to standards. I'm hesitant to say that this price is bad. I don't think this price is good. But I'm hesitant to like fully commit.
You
to,
have
like,
to
this price is
really
bad.
fall in love with this guitar to want to pay $4,500 for it.
Because part of my thought again is like, you look at other Les Pauls in other finishes, and they are still priced more than this. So it's like, how I understand like you got to do that refinish calculation, but if you just like take this to somebody and you're like, just make this an ebony, just do the black finish on this.
Okay. I like that triangle. I keep looking at the triangle, the way it comes off that stop tail. I don't know why I like this so much. Okay, I'm gonna buy it. Someone loan me $4,600 so I can buy this guitar.
I just that's all I'm saying. Like, I just dropped my pen.
Show's over. Steve dropped his pen.
I don't want to say like, oh, this is a great price. Like, this price is nonsense.
But you think it's normal.
And this price is nonsense to me, but you're also comparing this to like other Silverbursts that are like $5,000 or $6,000. So yeah, you're talking about or more.
Yeah, but
like,
people are paying that because they want the Silverburst.
Right. So but what I'm saying is, if you want a Silverburst, right?
Right.
There was a listing for a Silverburst for like $10,000. Is that a real price? I don't know.
Sure.
But that is a price that people are trying to get. Now, I feel like for $4,600, you just get one of those. You just get one of the new Adam Jones signatures. But then maybe that never gets to you because the Gibson delivery truck gets hijacked or whatever happened to those, and all the Adam Jones Les Pauls get stolen.
Okay.
So I just
maybe this is one of those guitars, and someone aged it and did weird things to the paint to try to like. To launder it, put it back on the market, Yeah.
Like I said, I think this refinish, I hope this was something that was done in like 1988 to someone who was like, I got the Silverburst Les Paul, but I really want to look like I'm in like a
new wave band.
New wave, like I'm in a Living Color band. I don't know why those designs make me think of Living Color.
Right.
And so I'm going to redo this, and not, something that was done later.
What would help this listing is a story. Like who did this modification to the finish?
Right.
What band were they in? What were they going for? Like the story makes all the difference. Like if you've got an instrument and you're listing it and it looks wonky and there's something obviously very different about it, you've got to tell the story in the listing if you want people to be invested in it. Like you have to get them interested and have an investment in the story behind the instrument if you want to be able to fetch money. Like if there's a cool story behind this, like, hey, I was in this band and we opened for Duran Duran and we would tour around and we needed a more like new wave look. It was 80s appropriate, and so we mangled this up one night, and the singer of the Go-Go's was there, and she lent me nail polish. Like stories like that. Like
just make something up.
Make something up.
Make something up.
Lies, guys.
Yeah.
Lies, 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 lies. Maybe you were in the Thompson Twins. That was the right band for that song, right?
I don't know. I only know Hold Me Now.
I'm pretty sure that's the Thompson Twins.
I keep looking at it. I don't know why I'm looking at your screen instead of my screen.
You have your own screen, Steve. Keep your eyes over there.
Yeah. I
say, okay, someone go buy it. $4,600 to go buy it. Even the back looks pretty mangled. It was definished on the back and the neck too. Like this isn't just the top. Like it needs a full refin.
Top to bottom.
So I say whatever the going price is for a close to normal condition Silverburst, you just got to knock $1,000 off of it for this thing.
I keep looking at the front of this thing. How do you remove a finish in straight lines like that?
I know, it's wild.
The case I think is original, or at least original era.
Yeah, it's one of those super geometric like rifle looking cases.
Yeah, I just
yikes.
That's what I was going to comment on. Is it says like an absolute must for your next Kiss/Tool audition, and I understand the association, but if you show up with this thing and you're like, look at me, I'm Paul. Is it Paul Stanley? Look at me, I'm Paul Stanley.
I could see Kiss rocking this. Ace Frehley.
Ace Frehley
would play the Les Paul. I could. Maybe I'm not up on Tool. I would have a tough time seeing this in a Tool cover band. The neon green and pink or purple, like kind of
the whole thing is
that.
It's like you need a Silverburst in order to be in a cover band for these artists. It's like
right.
If you're going to be in a Dick Dale cover band, you have to have a gold sparkle Strat, right? Yeah,
you just have to.
And so it's like, so if you go on with this and you're like, oh yeah, I got this Silverburst Les Paul just so I could audition for this Tool cover band, they're going to be like, what?
Well, you're crazy. You're in the band.
Yeah.
We like how crazy you are. Get in here.
Now, if it was like a new way doing new wave covers of Tool songs,
right?
But instead of it being played on bass, it's all played on like synthesizer.
The way you just impersonated Tool sounds like a banjo. I would have gone like ba-lum-bum. Ba-lum-bum-bum-bum. Ba-lum-bum. I don't know. Is that better? You guys tell us.
That was worse. That wasn't even the right melody. Do you got anything else to say about this?
I don't. Let's move on to the rest of the show.
Yeah, we're gonna, like Ryan said at the top, we're gonna smash in our interview with the guys from the Pedal Movie,
Dan and Michael.
Yeah, go check it out at thepedalmovie.com. I super enjoyed this documentary. I went into
it twice.
I went into it not actually, and I talk about this in the interview, I went in not expecting really a lot from it, and I think it is way, way better than I ever thought it would have been.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's really good production value, really good kind of editing of the narrative and stuff like that. There's so much. We get into it in the interview.
Don't spoil the rest of the interview, Ryan. That's all they need to know.
There's so much ground to cover, and I think they did a great job of making it concise.
Yep. So enjoy.
Yeah. All right. We're joined by Dan and Michael, the co-directors of the Pedal Movie. Is that the correct way to say it? The co-directors?
Absolutely.
Yes. Cool.
I nailed it.
So, I mean,
I don't know. Ryan and I have been bouncing off questions, and I know, your I don't know if publicity is the right word, but your social media people are like, oh, submit questions. And we're just like,
let's just hang out.
I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff to cover, but I guess, let's just start at the beginning. Like, where did this idea come from?
Right.
Sure. And for what it's worth, if you guys want to ask questions about like totally random stuff, like we could talk about pizza and imitate Blake a little bit or something like that. That's cool too. We're up for whatever. We're up for whatever. But
that's Blake's territory. We're more burrito guys here.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get those in a bit.
I am very happy to talk about burritos, but maybe we'll. In fact, the burrito movie. Maybe that's the next project.
Yes.
But to answer your question, so a couple years ago, almost 3 years ago now, Michael and I and some other folks at Reverb, we were kind of just talking a lot about doing something about how the boutique pedal industry became a thing. Because it's like, if you read up on the history of pedals or look into it at all, it's like there were basically like 5 or 10 pedal companies in like the 80s, maybe fewer. Yeah. And then 30 years later, I tried to figure it out. You cannot figure out how many pedal companies there are. It's thousands.
No, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
And it's like, so the question was really, what are the factors and forces that kind of led to that rise and that expansion? The internet has something to do with it. Changing music taste has something to do with it. All these things. So that led us to kind of start doing some like oral history kind of interviews with pedal brands that we knew, because Reverb, we have people coming through for different reasons, videos we're shooting, or we'll be at NAMM, So we started doing interviews with like Brian Wampler and excuse me, and Joel from Shea Bliss, and just started talking about their backgrounds and how they got into making pedals. And as we started to gather this interview material, we thought like, this is really great. It should be something bigger than a YouTube video. What if we made like an actual feature length documentary? Or at the time we were thinking about it, maybe it would be like a multi-part, kind of series, like a docu series on Netflix or something like that, or HBO or whatever. And then as that kind of evolved, we decided that since we really wanted to make the project or the film interesting to people who don't already have a vested interest in pedals, like people who are just interested in music or music history, that we really wanted to rewind and show the story from like front to back. So we kind of pivoted sort of halfway through, or at some point in the process of this, to kind of have the first 30, 40 years. And that's really where it came from. But the original catalyst was really just how fascinating it is that an industry can go from like 0 to 60 so quickly and create this wonderful culture of all these people that you and I all know and, are friends with and work with and whose pedals we play. So that's really how it happened.
I think that was one of the things that was hit in the doc. First of all, let me say, I remember you guys talking about this, I think around NAMM 2020, maybe a little bit before that. And because of COVID, there was like a delay. And I have to admit, I was a very snarky person, maybe not in public, at least behind the scenes with this. I was like, is this the new Seesaw?
Oh, yeah.
The project that
never seems to get launched.
Yeah, had a lot of steam, and then it's just going to get delays. I was riveted by this doc. I did not expect that. I put my kids to bed and I watched the entire thing straight through, and I was like, just go the frick to sleep. I'm watching the pedal movie. So I was really impressed. Yeah, it's a really good view.
Yeah. I watched through it twice. How many did you do, Steve?
Oh, just one.
Once.
I just absorbed it all on the first try. But I forgot where I was going with that. I wanted to say that, and then I was going to segue into something. Whatever.
Sorry,
I ruined it.
No, I ruined your train of thought.
I'll come back to it.
Slick
Yeah,
production
the
over
thing
here.
you were talking about, that it goes 0 to 60. One of the things that was really cool was when you have the interview with Fran from Frantone, and she talks about getting a lot of early traction because she had a website, and looking at that, and then also thinking about how I think Analog Man, Mike Pereira, has had the same website.
Yeah.
Like with no updates since like 1997. Like his website is still a GeoCities website.
It's the exact same thing as if you're familiar with the Space Jam website, which I think they may have updated for the sequel, but like for many years. Okay. maybe not, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like Space Jam and Analog Man still hanging out to that, bright
Analog Man
HTML.
should come out with a Space Jam pedal to commemorate.
No, Analog Man should just come out with Analog Man 2, and it's instead of it being Mike Pereira, it's like a new up and coming pedal builder.
So something I wanted to talk about is like the production side of this. You went all over the place filming all sorts of people, and I'm assuming you probably filmed dozens and dozens of hours of footage, like getting all of this. Like, is there anything that, like, any footage that you wish had made the cut? Like, you can't put everything in there. You already have a 2.5 hour long movie here. Like, obviously, there's got to be good stuff that didn't make it. Like, what's like top of the list?
Oh, an incredible amount. So yeah, we did shoot somewhere between, it was probably around like 125 to 150 hours. It's hard to tell because a lot of it's archival and a lot of it's B-roll, and I wasn't exactly keeping track of everything once we got that high, but it's a lot. A lot of 3 and 4 hour interviews. So
I know a lot of the people that are in it, and I've had conversations with them, and I know, like, you don't film Robert Keeley and get 2 minutes of clip. Like, you probably walked away with hours and stuff with these guys. Each one of them just sat there chatting for hours, I'm sure, and then you had to pick like the nuggets that would actually fit the narrative.
Yeah, totally. I think one way to kind of explain this is like, through the course of the movie, I don't think there's any spoilers here. It's like it follows a pretty chronological line up until like the last act, and once you get into kind of like the modern era, it's a bit more thematic. It's more like zone defense. It sort of bounces around a few different themes. So I think where Michael and I had the hardest decisions, and also shout out to John Gagan, our main editor, who worked with us, who's the third part of the team here, and was is involved with this, but. Excuse me. A lot of it was sort of like deciding, we have all these great quotes and footage explaining this theme, but maybe this theme isn't as important to telling the story we want to tell as this theme. So there's a lot of kind of things that have to get cut. The good news is that we have the Reverb YouTube channel, so there is lots of opportunity for some of this stuff to get out there. So for example, we released a video there a few weeks ago where we have 12 different companies telling their origin story, and a lot of those origin stories kind of are similar to each other. So within the course of the narrative of the film, it's not like necessary, I think, to tell every single one, where it's sort of just, adding. It's really interesting to people who are fascinated by this stuff, which is why we were excited to get it out on YouTube, but it's maybe a little repetitious. So it's things like that. So one example just off the top of my head is like, we talked a lot more in the interviews with some of the contemporary builders about like much more like in the circuit kind of stuff, like design process and like part selection and that kind of thing. And that exists in the movie throughout. Like there are hints of that here and there, but we had to kind of make the decision that like talking really deeply about some of the more technical stuff was probably not going to be super captivating to a general audience beyond the people who are already really, really into it. So it's like those kinds of things that I think were maybe the hardest to cut, because we are in that population of people who are really into it and want to hear that stuff.
Right. Totally. So you could release like smaller little pieces and just be like, oh, here, go listen to Zach Vex talk about, component selection for 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
From out of this hundreds of hours of footage that we have that we filmed for this.
And I mean, we have, if you look at like Nels Klein, we released a thing that was just pieces of his interview that don't end up in the movie, because all of the artists, pretty much everybody we talked to that we had enough time with, which was, I'd say 99% of everyone in the movie, had so much to say. Like what's wonderful about this entire community, whether it's artists or whether it's builders or even like media, is that they love talking about this. And it's almost rare when they get to, if you're an artist, you're usually talking about your own thing, or you're trying to dodge questions about who you're dating or something, right? So for them to be able to be like, I get to talk about gear, like, yeah, just keep it rolling. So there really is so much from people like Graham Coxon's interview, for instance, or Nels or Dweezil's. I mean, they go so deep into all kinds of corners of their careers and how it affects went in, but to go over, you know, the entire 13 album by Blur, like song by song, wouldn't fit into like 45 minutes of the film, right? But it's really good stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff like that I think we're going to be trying to roll out, you know, over the summer and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
So going along that, you know, there are, I think, a few clips, people you interview where it looks like they're actually being interviewed in the Reverb space in Chicago. I can't tell for sure, you know, but it's very clean setups. And then I know some of them, at least my understanding is that some of the interviews were actually conducted remotely due to COVID. Who like, I don't know, it's out there, I guess, a little bit. But did you guys feel like, obviously COVID, I think, it seemed like it extended the time that it took to release this. But overall, did that almost seem like a positive? Like, do you feel like it gave you more opportunities to interview, or was it just kind of like a frustrating thing of happenstance?
So I definitely wouldn't. I personally wouldn't call anything about COVID or anything like a positive. Yeah. But I will say that there was, I mean, that's not what you meant. I'm not trying to say that.
COVID, are you a big fan?
Guys, how do you feel about the devastation on the world population that this pandemic is causing? Did you make a better movie because of it?
Well, I do see what you're talking about. And I think if there was one sort of silver lining that time did allow us, because we really, even at Reverb, we were kind of totally restructuring and rethinking, you know, how in content, in video, and in writing, everything, sort of like, what does the future look like? So we got to take a step back and really look at what we had up to that point, which was a fair amount, and then see where the holes were and who we really needed to talk to, who was available, and who had the resources as well was another big thing. Yeah. And from there, we were able to kind of like slow down a little bit more than maybe we wouldn't have if that didn't happen, frankly. And so I think because of that, you know, we really pared down, like, okay, who are the last steps? What are the last steps we need to take? What are we missing here? And so for that reason, and everybody understanding kind of like, okay, you know, the filmmakers, we can't be in the same room anymore. We can't edit. I can't be over my editor's shoulder. So it became a totally different process from a post standpoint than I've ever worked in 15, 20 years. So because of that, things did move a little bit slower, but there strangely was a little bit more creative breadth, because we kind of stopped expecting what we were planning to expect in a way. And we kind of let things move a little bit more organically. And that kind of allowed us to be like a lot more discerning with just like with the creative choices on the film. So of course, I wouldn't do it over that way, but but
so you're not looking forward to it is what you're saying. You don't want a sequel to COVID.
I think kind of what Michael's saying, it also is like, the hardest thing about this is like, we could have kept filming interviews for another year and a half, 2 years, 5. It could have been a life, because it's one of those things where the more you zoom in, the more you learn about like, oh, there's this guy who like invented this, and like, you know, and this, and not even just the interviews we had scheduled, which we had to cancel, of which there were a bunch that we were, you know, really bummed about. But like also just, you know, the more you study something, the more you learn, the more you kind of hear about it. So I think the silver lining of like, okay, there's more of a line in the sand. We can't just keep going forever. And me saying, Michael, like, oh, what if we went and did this and interviewed this person, and him saying, no, we really have to get back to editing. We can't keep filming. You know, it was
to be like real honest, like some of those last interviews, you know, if we were, setting up distribution takes months. So, you know, we did have a rep film a long time ago, and that's just how the film industry works. But I would say that a month before we wrapped the edit, we still had 1 or 2 interviews coming in, and that's how much we were trying to we really want this voice, like we really want this person in there. Oh, I can't shoot for 2 weeks. We need to deliver the film in 4 weeks. So
Wow.
it really was like everything really was down to the wire. We really were aware that people needed this movie. We were aware that people were maybe upset that it had taken longer than they thought it would, and we're very, very conscious of that. But we still wanted to make sure that it was something that was like very, very good, the best thing we could make, and really representative of like just the industry, and not just like, all right, well, people are getting mad, let's put it out.
Right. Totally.
So.
Could you guys throw out maybe a couple people that you really wanted to get that it just didn't work out because of the timing and COVID or whatever?
Totally.
Ed O'Brien.
Ed O'Brien was the big artist and he was into it, and like we just couldn't quite get the logistics with COVID worked out, but that would have been really good, especially because Radiohead's career, apart from being very defined by like evolution of sonics, I think in a lot of ways, like, you know, the bend sounds a lot different than King of Limbs or whatever. You know, it's sort of like it covers this time span that's so like important to the boutique industry. So that would have been really good. And then very straightforward. I mean, we had this big trip to the East Coast planned that was going to be our last trip. That was in early May last year. So like right in like the wake of like, and we were like crossing our fingers, holding up hope, like, oh, COVID, how long can it last? Right. Like, and that trip was going to be the big ones. We were going to spend a day with Electric Harmonics. If you notice in the film, we have Mike Matthews in there, but it's an archive interview from the NAMM History Project. And shout outs to the NAMM folks, Dan NAMM, who was a wonderful partner and helped us with that quite a bit. But we were planning on doing a much longer thing with him and getting to actually do some shots of the EHX factory and all the history and stuff. And that same trip, we were also slated to film with Eventide, which I was really looking forward to, because Eventide is, I'm sure you guys might know, like they came to Pedals from having this amazing background making some of the most revolutionary studio gear in the history of recording studios. So that historic perspective on like the relationship between studio gear and effects, I think they really would have spoken to that quite well. And that was just another victim of COVID. And then a couple others, John Cusack was one we had lined up that fell through, unfortunately. And so
John is such like an invisible hand in the pedal industry. Like people don't realize like how deep he is into everything. Like he's responsible for so much stuff that people aren't even aware of. Is wild. Right.
And a lot of those folks too, whether it's RG Keen, you know, getting him on camera, something like that, or John Cusack, you know, a lot. I think if you've seen the movie, you realize that we're trying to make it's a love letter to the people, right? And especially those stories that people don't know. Like, if you're really obsessed with pedals, you probably kind of know the Glenn Snoddy story, right? But do you know this? Do you know these kind of more idiosyncratic things about where Roger Mayer came from, or where Fran Blanche came from, or George Trips, etc. And kind of having some of those, especially the sort of like very important people who maybe are not put on the same you know, they're not on Instagram like Jamie and Julie are from Earthquaker, right? But their importance is massive, and so we really wanted to try to get as many of those folks as we could in there.
I mean, it's hard. That it's like if someone asked me, like, "Hey, Ryan, you want to make a documentary about the past, the present of pedals?" Like, that's a humongous task. Like, I can't even think about how to tackle that, because there are so many facets. There are so many personalities and companies, and like trimming it all down to be a single narrative is just such a huge challenge. It's honestly just a monumental feat that you guys managed with this.
Thank you very much. It definitely took some elbow grease and a lot of hours, but I mean, I think that was definitely, you know, Michael can, you know, sort of he would certainly agree with this. In our sort of collaborative partnership here, it's like I think my background is more of like a writer and like history sort of snob, I guess you could say. Like my thinking was my impulses were very much like, we have to tell it, we have to include everybody. Like, how can we not? And Michael is much more of a
timeline and every single thing that happened, and like
exactly. And Michael is more of a filmmaker, and so his approach was very much like, no, we're telling a story. Like we're like making a movie that has to have like a narrative to it. So I think that anxiety of like, how can we have an interview, you know, that doesn't include this, you know, person, or doesn't mention Like, for example, we didn't have anybody on camera who was from DoD. And
Right.
that was like a big one that I thought, like, and there's a lot of examples like that. But I think our philosophy was like, at the end of the day, everybody in this part. I mean, part of the theme is that everybody in this industry, everybody who's interested in pedals has their favorites. Everybody like, that's what boutique pedals are about. Like, you love this company that nobody else has ever heard of, and it's like, or whatever it is. So there's always going to be a level of sort of like concern that we're not. But I think the approach of like trying to tell stories that are illustrative of like these broader themes and that are like, Mike Beagle from Musitronics talked about how he got involved with the industry in the 70s is a really great story. And maybe he's sort of a stand-in for a lot of other people from that era, the same way that, Wampler talking about going on forums. Wampler wasn't the only guy going on forums and learning how to do schematics, but him telling about that experience makes it a more generalized thing for everything else. So that was really the philosophy throughout, was sort of like the examples that illustrate the whole without having to tell we're not making an encyclopedia.
Right.
Did you guys feel like in doing the research, because this is something that I was thinking about while watching it, did you guys feel like while doing the research or come across this idea or maybe like a overarching theme that pedals kind of are like fashion? They are in cycles. I kind of thought about this when you're talking about with the MXR, which I never thought about MXR in the context of MXR1 being mass-produced American-made when they started, but also part of that mass production is that they're in the, I don't know, the Hammond 125 style or whatever enclosure, 1590 whatever style enclosure, where it's compact, everything's the same. In a time where everything was like, the Big Muff Pie, the Musitronics, like these weird shapes, boxes, everyone has their own enclosure, and then these guys come in. And recently, I know Ryan and I have talked about that. It kind of feels like the industry's doing that again. And it got me thinking, like, how many times has this happened where everybody's using the same box and then somebody goes, I don't like that box anymore, I'm going to do my own thing. And now there's a bunch of different boxes. And then in another 20 years, everyone will be using the same box again.
Like everyone's going to like start putting all their pedals in the Serotonin Klon box, and then and then 15 years it'll all be back to single size enclosures.
Like were there any other kind of cycles that you guys picked up on in the doing the research?
I think there are a lot of cycles. I think you could, even just if you kind of look at the film, there are still, I watched it last night as a kind of sort of premiere again for, I think, like maybe the 85th time. And even now I'm still seeing more kind of like microcycles when you talk about even just like trends with effects and music in certain eras becoming more prevalent than others. But yeah, I think going back to the cycles of like the consumer, the sort of demand for things, and how things are created, and how much and how sort of mass produced or micro produced they are, you do kind of see that those sort of trends in popularity go. If you look at like the mid 60s, and you've got this very, very, very boutique almost type of thing where you have people kind of making one-offs and that kind of thing, and it kind of gets passed around. Those things turn into larger things that influence even larger things, and then you have like the largest things in the 80s, or people kind of not wanting that anymore. By the 90s, it kind of starts over again. You kind of get like, I'm going to make 100 of these or 5 of these and see if they sell, and and then the cycle kind of starts over again. So I think you definitely do see that. I mean, we could drill a lot deeper into that. That was a real general statement, but I think
and
I think it's so interesting now that there's, like you said a while ago, there's thousands of pedal companies. You couldn't figure out how many pedal companies there are. It's impossible.
I tried.
It's almost like every single guitarist, every single musician can have a fully custom sound now. It's not like, oh, every band in town is using a fuzz face. It's like you can have your own fuzz that no one else in town is using fairly easily. It's wild.
It's like if you it's almost like the only metaphor I can think of is like cooking, right? Because
Yeah.
we might be doing the same recipe, but I'm in the UK and you're in California, in the US, and it's like, we might both be cooking with asparagus, but like this is a totally different, it's like, or whatever it is. It's even if it's the same basic ingredients, I have a delay pedal and an overdrive pedal and a reverb pedal, it's like going to be totally different. And I think that's obviously, when you talk about cycles, that cycle of like the quest for customization, the quest for finding not just like a sound, but an instrument, a tool set in the form of a pedal board. And then that in turn fueling more people to try to do the next thing like that. I mean, that's really what propels the industry nowadays. It's like that, I think that's the big shift that we allude to in the towards the end of the movie. But you guys know this is very, very tangible. If you look at the culture, it's like the shift from pedals as the kind of supplement to the hobby, which is playing guitar, versus pedals being the hobby in themselves, and playing guitar is like a means to that end. And I don't say that as any sort of judgment. I think that's a great thing. I think they're both great. And if people want to play guitar without any pedals at all, like that's super cool too. I mean,
it's boring. Screw those guys.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No, it is like this entire industry is propped up by the hobby musician, by people at home who want to mess around with different sounds and try different things. If we were waiting for, the hot recording artists of the day to determine what was hot or not in the pedal industry, there'd be 3 pedals that were popular right now. There'd be like 2 companies. Like there's just not enough famous musicians to keep this kind of scene going. It's so oriented around a hobby level culture of people who now have the internet to discuss things with each other and to show like, oh, here's a picture of my pedal board, and people like get on their phone like they're staring at it like, what is that? Oh, what is that? What is that thing? And it's a totally like social environment that I don't think we saw in previous generations, previous decades of guitar equipment. It's a really wild time.
Totally. And I think that exact same day, I mean, obviously a lot of this has to do with the internet and that, fuels cultural trends, but it's true of listening to music. Like, people, since you don't have to, you can listen to any music anytime, that creates a situation where music tastes are a lot more diffused. And this, Tosin Abasi might be the most famous guitarist in this particular subgenre, what is that even, progressive metal, or but a lot and there's millions of people who are obsessed with that genre and think he's the greatest guitar, but there's people right over there who are also interested in guitar music who've never heard of him potentially, because the tastes, and that's true of not just music, it's true of like everything in culture right now, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think with pedals, like you said, it creates this pocket where people can get so invested in this hobby, and it kind of becomes this huge obsession, and it keeps on fueling, where, like I was saying before, I can have my favorite pedal company that maybe you've never heard of because they only make 200 pedals a year, and I buy 2 of them.
Something I wanted to ask about is there's a section in the movie about like negative comments online and what builders have to put up with the peanut gallery on forums and stuff like that. Have you guys checked online to see comments on the movie yet?
Yes.
The temperature of the internet, see what people are saying.
Oh, God.
I will say the thing that most people are upset about right now is that there have been some issues. I don't know when this is coming out, so hopefully it'll be resolved. But there have been some issues with international access to the movie. And there's a few where we don't have clearance yet because we have to submit for like ratings and translation things. That's film board stuff. That's like kind of a hassle. So that's like New Zealand and Brazil, I believe, and a couple others. And then some of it is just this weird glitch thing where like on Google Play, it's not showing the right accessible for a lot of different countries. Anyway, this is more in the weeds, but I guess I wanted to say if anybody's experienced that, we're working on it and we're very sorry, but it should be resolved shortly. Other than that, I won't name any particular names of different forums or stuff, but what has been very satisfying is that there has been a fair amount of like people leaving their comment that's like, I'm not going to watch this. It's just going to be an infomercial for Reverb. Like,
right.
And then at least in 1 or 2 instances, we've seen people leave a comment like that and then come back and be like, all right, well, I watched it and I was wrong. It's actually really good.
we saw a bunch of those on Reddit, and Ryan was like, no, it's good. And it's like, and that's the thing is, and it's the same thing even with like the JHS YouTube. Like a lot of people are like JHS's YouTube is just a big infomercial for JHS pedals. It's like he almost I feel like he never talked about himself on there. And
I think Reverb does more demos for JHS pedals than JHS stuff.
But that's I've seen that a few times, and it's like, I think Reverb's involvement with the pedal movie was like from a Reverb Presents, and then it was just like by 10 minutes into the thing, I was like, this is just a movie. Like, this is
right. It's just a documentary.
If anything, it's probably more of a promotional piece for NAMM than anything, but because there's
you want to go see all these people in person, go to NAMM.
Because I mean, like in terms of the archival footage that's used throughout. I would have thought there's a museum up for this stuff.
If it's a promotional movie, it's a promotional movie for the entire pedal industry. Yeah. And since one of the main points we're trying to make is that a lot of people who are in this industry, it's a thing they're involved with from a place of passion. They're supporting their families and creating jobs in places like Akron, Ohio, and if we're being promotional for that industry, like great, that was really the impulse. But also point out that Michael and I started working on this, 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And our motivation then was very much just what, we think this is really cool. It's a story we want to tell. And we're in a position where we can tell it because we know so many of these people involved. We're already filming a lot of content about pedals for Reverb anyway. That can kind of be this launch pad into a lot of these other sorts of things. So we felt like we were kind of singularly positioned to do it. And if Reverb, if more pedals get bought and sold on Reverb as a result, like great, but like nobody's counting that.
Yeah,
there's nobody like sort of scrutinizing those numbers and like thinking about like, oh, can we do this exact same thing for ukuleles next year? Like, it's not really.
How about a snare drum movie? Can we do a snare drum movie?
The best thing that ever happened at NAMM was when they moved all of the drum booths into one room so you could avoid it. And it made it so that you could just sneak around the drum section and not have to deal with the snare.
The guy testing cymbals.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Oh yeah. Testing those cymbals. You really hear the difference on the NAMM floor of the
totally.
That's something that we talked about is for us, with there not being NAMM this year there may or may not be summer NAMM at this point. It sounds like they're trying to make it happen, but with no winter NAMM, like this felt like there was a little bit of like that NAMM experience, at least for us. Like,
we got to see all our friends that we didn't get to see this year.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think also it's important to remember, like going back to whether you're talking about, opinions on forums or diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry, whatever it is, like Dan and I set out from the very beginning to make a film where we were not inserting ourselves. It's not narrated. We didn't write anything for anybody. This was purely responses and themes that kept popping up over and over and over and over again. And when we would see something that we saw happening over and over and over again, like people wanting to talk about cloning or wanting to talk about forums, I mean, every person was more than happy to talk about things like the change that's occurred in the last 15 years in forums. So really, our job in this entire thing was just to express what the folks who are making your stuff and playing that stuff think.
Yeah, it was neat to see like Andy in there, and also like newer YouTubers like Emily and stuff like that. And that's my business. I do YouTube demos and stuff like that. It was neat to see that included as part of the narrative, because so much of this scene is the new internet media, like it's forums, it's the demos, it's Instagram, it's all this stuff. And it's incredible to me from my perspective to look at this industry and be like, there's so much going on here, and it's so like homebrewed that someone like me who objectively sucks at guitars can make my living like doing demo videos of pedals and guitars and stuff like that. It's just a really wild time. Like if you had told me 15 years ago that any of this was possible, I'd be like, guitar pedals, like making a living, like just showing them off. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
and what I really wonder about, it's like, is what other boutique industries or cultures that are really similar to this exist that we don't know about because we're not in that group. Like my wife's really into like letter pressing and like high quality like paper goods and that kind of thing. And like, you know, I know a little bit about that, I guess, just from sitting here next to her on Instagram. But it's like, maybe you can make a movie about boutique like letter pressing and like, you know, stationery and that kind of stuff, because there's probably a similar story where it wasn't available before the internet, and now there's this culture of people only doing limited batches of it. And I mean, alcohol is a very similar story that came up in a lot of the interviews.
Like craft breweries and stuff like that.
Craft brew is probably the most like, because, you know, everybody kind of knows that story. Like, I believe, like, I don't quote me on this, but I read somewhere that like in the 70s or 80s, there were like less than 10 American beer manufacturers or something like that. Like not including,
right.
And then by like now there's, you know, it's similar to pedals. There's thousands out there.
I think there's 10 breweries within 3 miles of my house.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, but at the same time, like the pedal industry is actually completely different, because if you think about it, it doesn't expand as far with the beer industry. Like you're not going to go flip a beer on the internet. Well, I guess maybe
resale for beer.
What's it like? Pliny the Elder. That like if you go to Beer Advocate, there's some beers like that actually are flipped like that, but there's probably a limited. I would imagine a shelf life on that.
Actually, there are some. Now that I think about it, maybe it is like Dark Lord.
Yeah,
but you can't buy a beer, try it, and be like, oh, not for me, and then go resell it. You know, and I think that's such a huge part of pedals, is that like you see something on the internet, like I like the way it looks, I like the description, I'm listening to sound samples, I want to try it. You get it, you try it for a while, and you go, I don't know, I want to try a different thing, and then you sell it. And there's this huge culture of like trying it, reselling it, buying something else, reselling it, and everyone trying to find the sound that's in their head or a sound that they've never even considered before.
Yeah,
it's a really wild, vibrant community that, it's hard to imagine a similar scene, you know.
The only one that I can think of is there's like outdoor goods and like bicycling and like some like sort of sporty stuff like that. Like people who are into like high-end bicycle stuff, they, you know, they'll swap their pedals and their brakes and all that kind of stuff. And there's a huge resale market for that. But it's you're right, it's not quite the same. And the difference is that they're looking for something tangible. Like they're looking for the pedal that feels the best or the brake that has the best sort of response. Whereas you could buy 500 different overdrives. They all do the exact same thing. And you're not going to know which is the one you like the best till you hear it. And it just clicks, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Did you guys get a lot of footage of Josh Scott talking about bicycles?
Yeah. I mean, isn't it funny? He does love bicycles. He loves both types of pedaling.
Yeah. Anything with pedals. Pedal boat. He's into pedal boats too. Like any flowers, they've got pedals. You know, he's all about
flowers.
It's just the word pedal. Anything that resembles that word, he's into it.
Was there any point in making this? Probably a lot of points, but anything particular that comes to mind where you're making it and you did a section and then all of a sudden it dawns on you like, I don't own this effect and I need to go buy this right now?
Quite a few.
Yeah. I have my gear, since I'm living abroad right now, has been very limited. So that's been kind of a blessing in disguise, because otherwise I would probably have bought a lot more. But I think like wah was something that I'm eager to get back into, because like the wah story is so cool, and I haven't had a wah pedal since I was like a teenager, and it's like because it's not really part of the music that I play, but like now I'm like, oh man, wah, it really is like such an awesome original kind of thing. So that definitely is a temptation. And then honestly, I'm sure you guys can relate to this. Like, you want to buy pedals from people you're friends with, and like you want to support their businesses. I don't have a Fuzzrocious fuzz, and I really need to fix that because I love the Fuzzrocious vibe, and Ryan's a good friend, and like, repeat that 100 times over. So I think that's where I feel the most. Like, I have several EQD pedals. That's good. I have a JHS pedal or two. Like, that's fine. But there's a few others like that.
I get myself in trouble because these companies, they send me stuff to demo, and then I end up with like all these pedals over here. I have 2 shelves full of fuzz pedals over there, and I can only use 1 or 2 at a time when I go and play gigs and stuff like that. But I look through them like, I'm not really using this. I could sell it. Oh, but Ryan sent that to me. It feels like
exactly
the person that I know gave this to me. Oh, this one's from Robert Keeley. I talked to, his guy over there, and he sent this to me personally. Like, it feels like this weird personal connection with so many of these pedals. And it's like, oh, I've got this pedal that Joel sent me to demo. Joel sent me this one. I could sell it and buy another one, but it wouldn't be the one that Joel sent me. Right. And like this personality connection where you feel like, even if you've never talked to them, you can feel like all these builders just from them being on the internet, just from interactions of them being on the internet. And it's really crazy. Like, the whole scene is just crazy.
Yeah. One of the great benefits of, being the video director of Reverb for the last 6 years is being able to try like every pedal you could imagine, right? Similarly, it's one of the great benefits of doing what we do. But while working on the film, the biggest outlier, like, I've played an original tone, but I've touched the Tone Bender 1.5 at Macari's, right? Yeah. Like the one that was made for Jeff Beck. So like, I have a very blessed life within the pedal, verse, as far as I'm concerned. I've been able to do that. However, one of my favorite people in the entire film and one of our favorite interviews was Fran Blanche, who really stopped making pedals kind of well before I got to Reverb, right? So her entire catalog of effects is now sitting at like the sort of top of my, like, I've never seen or heard one in person. Mm-hmm. So now it's all the Frantone stuff that I'm like, ooh, what does this do? So that's right. That's where I'm at.
Like, you've got your own unicorn now. Like, you want to start using
vintage guitars. Like, when I started thinking about vintage guitars I want to buy, it's like, that's never going to happen. Like, I could spring for an expensive Chase Bliss pedal here and there.
Right. But, like, even like, the most expensive pedal that's out there, like go find yourself an original Klon. It's expensive. People are trying to sell them for $3,000 and $4,000 now. But if you really, really, really wanted it, you could still get it, which is crazy. Like, there's people who definitely spend more money on less significant things for their hobby. Like, I'd never spend thousands of dollars on a pedal, but if there's someone out there who has that amount of discretionary income and they're like, oh, I want to try it, they could go buy one.
Totally.
Yeah.
They could buy it. And then if they don't like it, or they figure like, oh yeah, it's silly to have this, they can sell it again for the same amount of money or similar. It's right. Really,
it's really, like, it's like, imagine buying like a $200 or I don't know, even like a however much dollar, like a massive, extremely rare like Wagyu cut of brisket that's like 25, you know what I mean? Right. And like, if you decide that like you're not going to kill, or if you cook it wrong, you've just wasted a lot of money and you're not going to be able to get rid of it.
Like, there are vintage guitars that have been played by famous people that like most people will never be able to afford. Like, you can never afford, a guitar that Stevie or Yvonne played. You can never afford like a Dumble or something like that. But you can still go get like the most expensive pedal there is. I mean, I don't, everyone has different finances, but it's like a couple grand in the grand scheme of things is still accessible when you think about it in a certain direction. Like,
and I think where it gets really sticky is a lot of people who are probably buying that stuff think about it as an investment and think about it as an asset. So they're and when people start buying this stuff, be it guitars or pedals or whatever other sort of thing, not because they like, I think when you're saying, oh, I'm going to buy it and I can resell it and make my money back if it's not for me, like that's very cool. And, you know, I think Reverb has enabled that or expanded that to a certain degree. So that's good. But I think when people are solely doing it because they're trying to speculate on the market, that's where things get really sticky. And where I think there's a lot of anxiety within the industry right now is sort of like people, I mean, that's not limited to pedals. I mean, that's happening in every collector market the past couple of years, is just sort of like these bubbles and speculation going kind of rampant.
I remember when that happened with the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah.
Remember when everyone was buying Jar Jar Binks toys because they're like, oh, this is going to blow up. Before the movie even came out, there were lines around Toys R Us.
Or Beanie Babies. Remember that?
Babies, yeah. So there might be a certain element to that, to the pedal industry. Like, you know, Reverb with Chase Bliss launched the Bliss Factory.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's pissed a lot of people off because like everyone, like so many people bought it just to scalp it.
Yeah.
And like, there's like an unhealthy side to that, you know, like
totally
trying to get $2,000 for these things or whatever, when the builder and the original retailer intended them to be much cheaper than that.
And where I think we get frustrated, or not frustrated, but kind of disappointed. And, you know, that seems like ages ago now, but it's like, is that people who it's very, let's just say the pedal industry and internet culture is as susceptible to conspiracy theories as any other pocket of the internet. And the idea that, like, you know, somehow the people involved were like engineering this because, you know, because Reverb can get fees every time it sells. It's like you're giving us way too much credit on being like savvy enough to figure out a scheme like that, because like, apart from being evil, that's just very complicated. The people who were involved with making that pedal, like the marketing and everything around it, it's like, you know, the ZVEX folks, the Chase Bliss folks, handful of people at Reverb, including us. And it's like every single person involved with those projects, their motivation was, let's make a really cool pedal that ties into this movie and like can get people excited and get the word out a little bit because we're excited about this. And because you know, Joel and Zach like have this history, and Joel had been thinking about how he was going to make that pedal for like years, and like finally had the right opportunity to do it. The last thing on anybody's mind is like resale value, you know. It's just
right.
It's also just goofy to think, because I just started running the math of that in my head. I don't know why. Well, I know why.
I know
that's
why.
what I do.
That's what you do.
But it's like it's a really goofy to think about it as like a conspiracy thing, because it's like, basically, in order to commit to that conspiracy, you have to assume that like somebody in this process was like, you know, it would be a really good idea. Let's have a limited edition pedal where we're going to pull 5% from a line of, you know, 100 pedals for $400. So we're going to make $8,000, and then people will flip that for $1,000. So we'll make another, like, and you add it up and like, that's a lot of work for a company to make $40,000.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah. And with the, you know, and I think the problem is that a lot of these people think about it and go like, $40,000, that's like what I make in a year. And it's like, yeah, but when you're running like a company, $40,000 is like,
right.
That's what
there's three companies involved with this pedal, and it has to get split across dozens of employees. Like, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah. And we've talked about like, that's like 3 companies going to NAMM. You know, Reverb has like a huge booth at NAMM. I don't even want to know how much that costs. I know like the smallest booth is like $5,000, $8,000. I don't even want to know what like a full floor.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
So it's like these numbers seem staggering to an individual, but when you start thinking about it big, it's like,
I think
it's not a conspiracy worth conspiring about.
I think that's part of the fun, though. It's part of the culture, is people online taking all this stuff way too seriously. Totally. And that's their fun. Like, it's the same thing as people who watch movie trailers and dissect them and like, oh, can you believe that there's this scene, and what are they alluding to is going to happen in this movie? It's a dumb movie.
Yeah. Or
these are just pedals. Like, I know that your entire being is wrapped up in trying to find a conspiracy here and trying to find like an angle where you think some manufacturer is trying to stick it to you with something that you didn't even know existed a week before. but I think it's a source of entertainment, and that's something so unique about this scene, is that the existence of these products is a source of entertainment for so many people. Just
100%. It's
thinking about them all day, like thinking about collecting them, thinking about what they mean. Like it's
like that's such a good point, and I wish I had thought about it in these terms before, because like you're right, it's almost like I follow NHL hockey. Right. Mm-hmm. Like that's like the one sport I'm interested in. Although my wife and I have been trying to get into F1 racing since we watched that Netflix documentary series about F1, which is really good, by the way, if you're into. But the thing is, like, I actually read more like hockey statistics and like tweets and like articles than I actually watch games at this point, because like a lot of the hobby is like the news and like the and like the thinking about it and like, oh, who's going to be traded? It's like fantasy, like all that kind of stuff. It's kind of similar with pedals. It's like there are certainly people out there who are more interested in like reading up on what the new release is and like what happens at NAMM and watching a demo channel or listening to a podcast. They might spend more time doing that than they actually do playing with pedals, and that's totally cool. Like it's like you're saying, like it's part of the thrill and part of the fun.
Like I love the whole pocket of the internet where people, anytime a new pedal comes out, they like look at it and they find like a gut shot and they're like, it's a ripoff that they're charging this much money because I could build that. It's $15 worth of parts. Like that whole, like, it's fun to make fun of those people, but it's like they're having a lot of fun. Like that is their entertainment. Like them picking apart every single product and thinking about how much it would cost them to build it while ignoring all the other facets of business.
One of my favorite lines in the movie is Dweezil Zappa saying, you know, there's these people that are chained to the wall in their mother's basement eating dog food, typing away as to why the Tube Screamer is the greatest pedal ever made or whatever.
I want to say, Michael, I'm really impressed that you were actually able to quote that line verbatim, because I knew it too, but you had it exactly right.
Well, I did edit 6 trailers and a film for 2 years, so I saw that clip a lot.
we actually saw the tweet from the tattoo parlor where we know that's your tramp stamp now.
Oh my gosh. Do we have anything? This is starting to run along. Do we have anything else that we want to cover?
Yeah, we do. We mentioned this at the beginting. What's your guys' go-to burritos?
Oh yeah, burrito talk.
Ooh, man. Okay, I got a good one. There's a really good restaurant in Chicago called Irazu, which is actually not very far from where Michael lives, now that I think about it. And Irazu is a Costa Rican restaurant, and they have an amazing vegetarian burrito that has guacamole and mushrooms and all this kinds of stuff. But I'm not a vegetarian, and the move is if you get the vegetarian burrito and have them add chicken to it or whatever else you like, it's like the most super burrito you can possibly imagine, because it has all the filling of the normal size vegetarian burrito plus everything else. So I guess my favorite burrito is vegetarian burrito with meat added to it.
I never thought about that.
It's like a cheat code secret menu kind of thing.
I need to do that now.
I make a really good like vegetable stew, and my secret is chicken broth and meatballs.
Yes. Exactly.
I start off with a vegetable stew and then I put meat in it, and that makes it really good. What about you, Michael? What's your go-to burrito?
I'm going to shout out one of my favorite restaurants in Chicago, which is called Lonesome Rose. It's up in Palmer Square, and they have a burrito that is a fire chicken burrito, and it is almost like having like a Nashville hot chicken or something inside of a burrito, but it's like exploding, but it's not dry. It's like it's got all kinds of wonderful stuff in it, and it is. I go there often. Well, I did, but I will be going when everything is open and outside again. But we used to just remake stuff off of the menu, me and my wife, just to taste it when they were closed for a while. But that's the place.
Nice. What about you, Steve? California?
California.
Yeah. Have you guys ever had a California burrito?
Like from California?
I mean, I've been to California. I've been to California a lot, and I've had a lot of burritos, so I'm assuming.
There's a style of burrito local to San Diego called the California burrito.
I think you can get them at the right places
They're starting
in
to
LA.
they're starting to spread out. But it's a carne asada burrito, but they stuff it full of French fries too.
Oh,
I have not had that.
It is a perfect drunk food. I'll say that.
The legend is that there was a taco shop across the street from McDonald's in like one of the surf communities, and so surfers would come in, get like a small fry or whatever from McDonald's, then walk across the street and just tell like the taco shop, like, can you throw these fries inside of a carne asada burrito? And that's like, again, I don't know how much of that's true, but there actually is like a 5-minute, 10-minute long documentary on the California burrito. It was from like 5 years ago.
I'm definitely into it, but I was always the kid who would put French fries in my like burger at McDonald's.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same concept.
yeah, just throw it in the milkshake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like strange sometimes to go and get like a falafel and not see fries on the menu. Like fries have been integrated into everything.
Yeah.
Waffles and fries.
Who doesn't like potatoes? Like it's
exactly.
Like perfect food,
I guess we're talking about fries now, which is the natural segue. What's your go-to chain hamburger?
Oh my gosh, we're not going to do food for an hour. Come on.
It just got me thinking about Josh Scott. There's a pedal connection here, and the whole In-N-Out versus Five Guys thing.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you can't get In-N-Out in the Midwest, so it has to be Five Guys.
I don't want to go down this road. I'll never stop. Clearly a documentary could be made about anything. Do you think you guys will do more of these? Do you think you'll do another Guitar Gear oriented documentary, like a guitar documentary, an amp documentary, an accessory documentary, like you do like
the capo movie?
A capo movie?
Yeah. I think the French fry and thing movie is the one.
I think we've been making a lot of mini, probably made like hundreds of little mini documentaries in Guitarland and Synthland, et cetera, that are all up on the Reverb YouTube channel. I don't think we have any plans to stop doing little historical deep dives into all kinds of facets of the music gear and music industry. As far as a feature length thing, I'm just happy that Dan and I put out this movie yesterday, and people are enjoying it. So I think I'm going to take a bit to think about the next feature film, but it's not out of the question. Nothing is out of the question.
Yeah. Well,
I, on the other hand, have envisioned it as a multi-phase cinematic universe. Where this is the first one where eventually half of the pedals in the universe will be destroyed so that the other half can survive. And but that's many years from now.
So what I'm hearing is that little one-liner at the 30-minute and 43-second mark in the pedal movie is really the crux of the entire
exactly
storyline. And people should go back and watch it and look for clues as to the character development that they're going to see across the cinematic.
Honestly, obviously we're kidding, but now that I think about it, it really was a missed opportunity not to have a Marvel style like bumper at the very end of the credits, where it was just some like very strange like pedal performance or something. Director's cut, right?
I think you just have to steal, I forget which Avengers movie it was, but I think you just have to steal the shawarma scene from the end, but it's just a bunch of pedal builders sitting around eating, whatever pedal builders eat these days. They're just shooting the breeze.
Whatever pedal builders eat these days.
And also, all along those lines, I do really want to see.
Is this where we end this interview, Steve? Is that the way you want to close this out?
I just want to say congrats to you guys.
Yeah.
It sounds like the launch is going really well. And again, I super enjoyed this. I'm pushing this on in a lot of places where people are like, I don't really know about this. I'm like, no, just go check it out, because this is definitely worth watching. And thepedalmovie.com that's the gateway, right?
Yep. And it's available on iTunes, Google Play, and Vudu. And like we said, keep an eye on the Reverb YouTube channel, because there already are a bunch of spin-off features, and there will be more coming there. So
And if you already have watched the movie, we just wanted to thank you so much for renting and purchasing it. And
thank you very much.
Really just thank you for helping this film get up into the iTunes charts. We're really excited about that. And we hope all kinds of people get to keep seeing this and digging into the pedal world.
Nice. All right, guys. Thanks for giving us your time. And we'll talk to you again when you finish up the Capo movie.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
There we go.
All right.
Whoa, that was a lot of fun, right, Steve?
Yeah.
Loved hanging out with those guys.
This is the part of the show where we thank our new Patreon supporters. If you want to support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/60cyclehumcast, where for as little as $1, you can help us out. So thanks this week to Stephen Brady, who is joining us at the $5 level. And at the $1 level, joining us, Lumpy Dump Truck and Jesse Perkins. So again, if you want to support the show, if every single person who watched this show,
I can't wait to see Lumpy Dump Truck in the end roll credits as we play songs. That's a fantastic name.
If everyone who watches this just signed up at the $1 level, that's all we're asking for, guys.
Every single person sign up at the $1 level.
That's $12 a year. That's like 3 times through the Starbucks drive-through. That's like half of a trip to In-N-Out.
Come on, super rich Steve. How much money do you actually spend when you go to the Starbucks drive-through? I'll take one of everything. You know what? No, 2 of everything.
Oh my gosh. So this week's song, we're gonna get out of here. This week's song was sent by Casey Arujo. That's what I'm gonna go with. He says, "Hey guys, huge fan of the show. My wife and I did a synthwave cover of Chris Isaac's Wicked Game a few years ago. Hope you guys enjoy it. Check out our band Out of Sight, Out of Mind on Spotify. Gear used is a Korg Volca keys, Volca FM, Volca sample, and a Tascam Porta Studio for tape loops."
This sounds fun. I can't wait to hear this.
So get this plugged in.
So the connection's bad. That was a really fun treatment of that song.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I could without question hear that popping up in like a movie or a TV show or something like that, like something like as use like transition music, and you're like, oh, why do I know that? And then you like realize, oh, that's a Wicked game.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
really, really clean.
It's a very like
treatment of that.
cinematic.
Yeah, totally.
styling.
Love it.
Very
Just
cool.
love it.
Well, thanks for sending it in.
Yeah. Bye everyone.
Stay grounded.